Okay, it's time for Cooking with Dad. It's time for the big show. The big show here is Christmas Eve dinner. And I thought that I know you guys love Christmas Eve dinner. You love the spaghetti. You love the sauce. You love the the egg, the meatballs, the sausage, the veal, the eggplant, lasagna, whatever else we make with it. But the sauce recipe obviously came from your grandpa, and that actually came from my grandpa. Now, a little bit of mystery as to how that actually occurred. This is really kind of a northern Italian dish, and my grandpa was Sicilian, which is southern Italy. So this is not even a really traditional Sicilian dish. It's more of a traditional northern Italian way of making sugo, which is sauce. Might even, I got some hints on some other things that I might change up a little bit. Not too much, but it's always good to experiment. But this is pretty well refined at this point. I watched Grandpa make this sauce for many years, starting when I was a kid. And I started making it, and over the years I changed a bunch of things, and kept kind of, well, even in Grandpa's words, improving it to where it's pretty locked in right now. So I have a recipe, but I thought it'd be more important to kind of demonstrate, because a lot of this stuff is a little unusual and maybe doesn't jump right off the page at you, but you can see the whole process, and I know kind of how Grandpa did it, and know how I've done it for all these years, and my hope is that that you'll be making it for yourselves and your friends, family, and others in the future. So that's why I'm doing it in this format. It's probably one of the coldest days of the year that the years I've ever been here in Colorado. It's heading down to about -8 or so tonight. It was like a high of minus 20 again. It was a high of like -4 today. So, so we're running the heat. We're gonna run the stove. We're gonna run the oven. We're gonna do all this stuff in pieces and parts. So this will be jump cut together in a lot of different ways. But we're going to start with the sauce. And starting with the sauce, the main thing in tomato sauce, of course, is tomatoes. Alright, so tomatoes. And then we have some other, obviously some other things that that need to be put in. There's sauce, there's tomatoes, there's paste. There's garlic, there's spices. We're going to try a little something different with some onion and carrot to maybe provide some sweetness. One thing that's not on the table here is, usually later on in the mix, I'll throw some Chianti in. These items here are more for adding some sweetness to the sauce. Tomatoes are kind of acidic. And we want to add some sugar without adding sugar, although you can add sugar as well. One of the oddball things is a potato. That also helps absorb some of the acid out of the sauce, so we kind of add that in when the sauce is all ready to go. So this is a big batch, but so this is like close to the normal batch that I make. It's about 3/4 of what I normally make. Have made over the years, but that'll be plenty. But you do need a couple things. One of the things you definitely need is you need some kind of big pot. Now this is a 5-gallon pot, and the sauce will only come up to about here or so. But by the time we add all the meatballs in, and the sausage and the veal and that kind of stuff, it's gonna get up there. So you need a big pot. Now, this is a thin pot on the bottom. That's a decent sized pot, don't get me wrong. But one of the things you do have to watch out for is scalding on the bottom, especially when you're using an electric stove. electric. So you have to, we're gonna have to keep this moving a lot. I'll move it around the grill. It's better if you have a really, like a copper clad bottom or something really heavy duty on the bottom. But those are quite expensive. If you don't, got the recipe down, use a thicker, use a thicker bottom. You just don't want to scorch the bottom of the sauce because that will burn, and you sure don't want to mix that up into the sauce. I did that one year and it was disgusting. So you want to avoid that at all costs. So the secret to that is going to be cooking it rather slow once it thickens up. Keep it on the slow side, and then in the beginning it'll be on high, and that's fine. When it's really thin, it won't, scald. But as it gets thicker, you need to keep that in mind. So we're going to kind of get started, and I'll explain to you the one thing that's a little different here. So this is another thing that is nice to have. I guess technically this is some kind of sieve of some sort. Has a little rack. This thing is like a mesh, and then it has a mortar of some sort, and we put tomatoes in and we smash them up and everything. Honestly, for years I used my hands. I squeezed the life out of the tomatoes and everything, but you do want to strain them. You don't want the seeds, you don't want the end pieces, you don't want any skins or any of that kind of stuff. So we're going to get started here in a moment. The one thing that's a little different that I'm going to try is adding these carrots and onions. So kind of frying them up first in the pot, right, with a little oil and garlic and everything, and kind of sauteing them down to almost nothing. I'm going to chop them really fine and everything. I'm still sort of undecided on potential of some anchovy paste I might experiment with, but we'll leave that for later. But normally I wouldn't do these things. We'd start right with the tomatoes and get right and the spices and get right to it. So we'll leave the new thing as kind of an add-on or an addendum here, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we'll get the rest of the ingredients and we'll start. Okay, this is part of the sofrito. This is the carrots and onion and anchovy we're trying to cook up here. We'll see how that works and whether I like it or not. Carrots, really diced finely. Kind of want everything to kind of melt away in the fry. Kind of like a 2-to-1 type thing with the onion, like twice as much onion. Same thing with the onion. I kind of want it to melt away. We'll see how this works, and if I like the general flavor look of it, and whether I'll decide to put it in or not will be based on how I feel about it. The important thing is to make sure these are softened and that we're maybe around somewhere around 15-20 minutes or something like that. So lower heat, then don't brown them. We just want them translucent and soft, and always a good amount of olive oil in there will do the trick. So you want to let these cook for at least 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We'll see how they look, but the longer the better. And see if I feel like this is going to add some sweetening flavor to it before we maybe consider adding some anchovy paste into the mix. Ho ho ho, Merry Christmas. Back at it here with the sauce. I did fry up carrots and onion, sweet onion, and put a little anchovy paste in and garlic. And then I pureed it in the food processor. I think it'll incorporate well once we boil it down to nothing. Has a good smell to it. The whole point is to make things a little sweeter without not adding sugar or wine or those type of things. So, I might give that a try. Still may back out at the last minute. You never know. So I've taken the liberty of opening our cans of tomatoes and our cans of sauce and our cans of paste. The cans of tomatoes. So tomatoes are whole tomatoes, right? So pick a fairly good brand. They'll have a the whole tomato, and there'll be a little bit of sauce around the outside. Sauce again, yeah, pick a fairly good brand. Contadina's nice. Some of the others, Cento, and some others. But that's just sauce in these. And then obviously tomato paste is the thick one that we do, that we add in gradually later on. So we start with our pot, and with our sieve. And like I said, I might get impatient and actually do that, but basically I just pour the tomato and the sauce in there. Then we'll get you a shot of what that looks like in a sec. But take our order here and just kind of poke around at it. There's about 4 or 5 tomatoes in each one, I think. This will strain out the, any of the, not skin, there's no skins on them, but the rough parts. This is a very fine sieve, so it gets, well, it gets clogged up pretty quickly, and it doesn't like to put a lot of the stuff I want to put through. So you got to be a little patient with it. But eventually it makes its way through, and then sometimes it's good just to have some kind of spoon or spatula or something like that to kind of work through to push it through the sieve and whatnot. Like I said, sometimes I even resort to my hands to get it as fine as possible. But it's kind of a combination of pushing it through the sieve and just working it out until it gets done. So alternately, like I said, you can just take and squish it in your hands, get it squished down to as possible, and push it right through the sieve. And there's 5 cans in this, which is 3/4 of a batch for me. Each of these cans is, 28 ounces. So it's the cans that look the exact same size as the sauce, I think, are 29 ounces. So a little odd stuff, but you can see there's still a lot of pulp or puree in there, but you don't want to waste a lot of it. So like I said, I usually end up just using my hands, getting it down till not much of anything left, just that solid stuff. Push it through the sieve, and then you're kind of left with this, just the kind of the guts of the tomato, which I just throw in a can and get it all out of the sieve before we add the next can. It's that simple. So here we have a can of tomato, pour it into the sieve, and we start the mashing. I'm just gonna use my hand from here on out. Let me turn this the other way. So I can hold on to the handle, and we just start mashing away till we get all the cans in there. And all the tomatoes are crushed. We end up with a nice bit of pure tomato sauce there that we're going to bring to a hard boil. We're going to add in some spices, and we're going to get that going. We're going to heat that pretty hot. Boil it down, get it down just to its essence, and then we'll add in our carrot and other mixture, and we'll see how it goes from there. Till the next step. Okay, the tomatoes and the sofrito, the carrot mixture, is in the pot here, and we have the other ingredients to get added right away. So we're going to bring that to a boil. We got 1 cup of Chianti, some kind of sweet wine. Chianti is very sweet, so that and then we also have basil and oregano, okay, which we'll crush up finely and throw it into the pot. So that is the next step. And then going from there, we let that cook down a little bit, get that good and incorporated. And then from there, we just go to adding the sauce little by little. So can by can, we just kind of get that rolling. And then when the sauce is still good and hot and everything, we start taking the paste and we take little spoonfuls of it and we dump it in little by little. Make sure it gets incorporated well, because that's the stuff that'll stick to the bottom. In a lot of cases, I'll even take some of the hot liquid out, put it in a separate bowl, incorporate the paste in with the hot sauce so that it's good and stirred up rather than adding it directly to the pot. That prevents the paste from kind of getting to the bottom of the pot and just kind of potentially scalding or not mixing in really well. So those are the next steps. Actually, those are the steps until we get to the point of making meatballs and and sausage and veal. But the meatballs are the next step to the sauce recipe, so that'll be a while down the road. We'll get with these, get that started and cooking. Remember, this is I'm doing this a good 24 plus 36 hours before we're gonna eat it, or closer to 48 hours in this case, which is fine. It can sit on the stove, it can sit for a while. The main thing I like to do is I like to let it cook. So it's gonna simmer. I will shut it off overnight. Don't leave it, when I'm sleeping, but I'll leave it on that on the stove and just let it kind of simmer and cook. The more it cooks, the better it tastes. Okay, next step, add these things in, get that boiling. We'll go from there. Okay, we got some fire going here now. Starting to boil a little bit. Got it pretty much on high at this point. It's steaming up there. Yeah. And like I said, with the bigger pan and the electric stove, make sure to move it around a little bit. You don't want it to scald when it's super high like this. But now that it's getting to that boiling point, we can add in, we're going to add in 1 cup of Chianti. See, it's starting to boil over there. And we got our basil, which it's dry basil. Try and get some good basil. But I like to mush it up in my hands, grind it up so it's more fine than it is as it comes out of the jar, so you don't have chunks of it in the sauce. So you can see how much finer it is now in that way. So get our basil in here. oregano. Oh, smells so good. Same thing. Get that ground up nicely. Nice handful. Turn it down, you get it boiling. Now you get all that stuff incorporated in there. That's funny, in the beginning here, kind of looks hard to see through the steam, but looks pretty spicy, looks pretty green. That's good the way that is. We're also going to have some fresh basil in there, larger chunks. We'll put that in more toward the end when it's good and cooked already, when we're in the simmering phase. Get that now. We just keep that heated. We turn the heat down a little bit because we want it to boil still. And I'd probably, give it 10 minutes or so of cooking down at this point, and then we'll be bringing in our first can of tomato sauce to add to the mixture. So it pays to keep stirring it. Where our wooden spoon is definitely a great thing to have, something you can move the bottom around. Make sure you get it all stirred up good. And look at all that steam coming up there. I'm going to keep it on kind of medium-high-ish type heat. Keep it boiling. Move that around every once in a while. About 10 minutes, we'll throw our first can of sauce in, and we just keep incorporating in as we go along. And now we just wait. Okay, we've added a couple cans of sauce in here already, and I took the paste, put it in a bowl, scooped out some hot stuff, and mixed it up so it's kind of smoothed out at this point. So now we can start adding this in while it's still nice and hot and boiling, but let's not do it all at once. Let's do it a little at a time, as it is still, you can see it's still noticeably thicker than the sauce is. Let's put some of that in. Get that stirring up in there. Ooh, thickening up. That way also this paste mixture is also a little warm already because it had the hot liquid in it, so you're not just taking cold paste and dumping it right in there, which makes it harder to incorporate in. Now it's going to take longer for this to boil up again, so we'll add it in a little bit by little bit as this starts to reboil up. We still have 2 more cans of sauce. You'll see little bubbles come up here and there. We want this to be nice and hot all throughout, so that the paste gets incorporated really well. So we'll keep doing that until all that's in there and all the sauce is in there. In fact, we might add another sauce along the way because the sauce is thin, just to keep it, make it easier for it to boil. So let's do that. We just dump that straight in, scrape out the rest of the goodness that's in there. All right. And we're still kind of on medium high at this point. let that boil up. We'll incorporate the rest of this paste mixture into the sauce. Add the last can of sauce at some point, and then we'll let it cook at medium-ish type thing. We still want it to boil occasionally. We're just gonna stir it a lot. Just keep stirring and stirring and stirring. We'll throw the lid on, and we'll let it get really hot, and then we'll bring the temperature down. When we bring the temperature down, it'll then we'll make sure to keep the lid on. That'll really start to seal in the goodness here. All right, we just gotta be patient, wait for everything to boil, and then we'll be back with the next steps. Okay, that sauce is cooking. Meanwhile, took 2 potatoes, baking potatoes, stick them a couple times with a fork, peel them, stick them a couple times with a fork. And while it's in this cooking stage, not so much the simmering stage, but the cooking stage, we drop these into and that helps remove the acids out of it. When that potato gets soft and it's able to be broken apart in 2 pretty easily, then we take it out of the sauce. Right now we're still in that cooking phase, which means lots of stirring. All the cans of sauce are in, all the paste is in, all the spices are in at the moment. You can taste it at this point, and it's not going to taste right. That's because the maturation of it is going to take a little while. You might want to add more wine in. You might want to add a little more spices in, depending on how it's good. This is pretty dialed in, but preferences are preferences. If it's not thick enough, you might want to throw a little more paste in. If it's a little too thick, have another can or so of sauce laying around just in case. The last thing I'd say is that part of the reason it doesn't taste right at this point is not just the cooking aspect of it, but is the kind of the secret sauce of the whole thing, which gives it a lot of flavor and everything, and that comes from the meatball stage. When the meat's in there, that will change the sauce as well. But the meatball stage, which is where we fry up the meatballs, and when we're done frying up the meatballs, we take the leftover oil, garlic, and all that kind of stuff, and we incorporate some of the sauce into it. It makes a giant mess. It's a pain in the ass. It splatters everywhere. But we cook that down really good, and then we're going to strain it back into the sauce. So with a couple pans of meatballs, we'll have a good opportunity to get some real kind of juices from the beef get into the sauce. It gives it a lot of savory type of flavor. So that's where the secret comes from. A lot that most people don't do. In fact, I've never seen a recipe that does that. So that's what we got here. So again, cooking stage, kind of medium low. It'll stay cooking at a much lower temperature on the electric grill, on the electric stove. So, but again, it's something we're still lid off at this stage. We're stirring a lot, lid off, and because this pot is big, every once in a while we'll shift it around on where it is on the burner so that we don't get any hot spots on the pan itself. So for now, we're shutting down until we get to the meatball stage, which for this particular making probably will not occur until tomorrow morning. Okay, until the next step. Okay, overnight, got to heat it back up slowly. Don't want anything to stick to the bottom. This is the hard part. But starting to get richer. Even just sitting overnight, flavor is starting to come out of the sauce. This is very good. We're on target. So later today we do the meatballs. Just wanted to get a quick one, show the morning after.